Ohio State and Notre Dame are playing for a national championship.
Right? Yes, that is true. So the same 4 teams have been in the college football playoff rankings 1 through 4 in a number of orders since the first one came out at the end of November 24th to be exact. Now, I don't really have a problem with these 4 teams. The only team I wish was in was Cincinnati, but the college football playoff has kind of become the best teams from the Big 10, Big 12, SEC, ACC, and kind of mix and match. Yeah, Notre Dame's been in a couple times independent, but they're in the ACC this year, so it like kind of confuses things. But I'm not going to argue against any of these teams being in. They should have a chance. They're as deserving as anyone else in the country, really. I really don't have a problem with these 4 teams getting into the playoff. What I do have a problem with, what I'm seeing happen is we don't have enough spots to play for the national championship. Now, I've heard the argument that would water down the regular season, and I have to disagree. I think there's a way to solve this. Each winner of the FBS level should get a shot for playing for the national championship. If you win your conference, you're automatically in. They do this in basically every other sport in the country. If you win your conference, you're playing postseason football. Now, that doesn't mean you win the national championship, obviously, but you're playing postseason football, which is what they do everywhere else in the country. They do it in basketball at the March Madness tournament. Obviously, if you win your tournament, you're automatically in, automatic bid, especially if you win the regular season or the postseason tournament. So, obviously, you can't do that in football, but it would create parity because teams like the AAC, the MAC, or the Mountain West would get a shot at winning it all. So recruits would be able to would actually have an incentive to go to a Cincinnati or a Boise State or a Coastal Carolina or even an Oregon, a Washington, or a UCLA, instead of all of the top recruits going to Alabama, Clemson, and Ohio State every year. Like, you would create parity by saying, hey, you win your conference, you get in, because players would know, I don't have to go to the Big Ten. I can stay at home and play for this group of 5 team by me and have a shot at winning the national championship. Now, obviously, you'd have to fill in the bracket with wild cards, and there is the obvious thing with independents. How do you solve that problem? You just give them a wild card spot. So really, it becomes each of the teams that win a conference get in, and then you have the one independent, so whoever's the best independent, which would actually force the independents to play each other. So BYU would play Notre Dame. And I mean, if we saw that matchup this year, that would have been a great game, in my opinion. I mean, BYU played lights out. They finished with the same record as Notre Dame, and I don't see why they wouldn't play. You know, you get the independents to play each other. Yeah, Army and Navy's a little different. I know they're independents, but it just be really, really interesting. And I think it would give a chance also to revive the 5th Power 5 conference, the Pac-12. They haven't a team get into the college football playoff in 4 years, Tanner. To solve that, you just give them a spot. You give one of their teams a spot. And then obviously the 3 other wildcard teams are the top 3 teams that didn't win their conference. So that would become a debate, like who would you put in? But it would solve the issue and I think create more parity and not less. Now, you would get a team in with a lower record sometimes. Like a team, I guess in theory, could go 0-4 in non-conference play and then win every game of their conference and then make the conference championship and win it. Sure, that's going to happen. But look at the NFC East. I mean, the winner of the NFC East this year is going to have a losing record. So you're telling me if it can happen in the NFL, but we can't have it in college football? That's a little ridiculous to me. So, yeah, I that's how I think how it should be done. Will Group of 5 teams not win as much early on? Yes, but eventually it will even out as they get in to the playoff every year and garner national exposure.
And Zach, I think you find it interesting because, as we said, these last 4 teams have been here for pretty much throughout the entire college football season.
Right.
We noticed it really wasn't until the last couple of weeks that if it was before these last few weeks, I would have said, well, there's definitely your 4. But I mean, of course, when last week when Ohio State was at number 4, there were actually talks of switching them, and Texas A&M But then Ohio State made their case this past week, and they beat Northwestern for a Big Ten championship, which pretty much cemented that they were probably going to make it. Then, of course, there was the talks for Notre Dame. After they lost to Clemson, people were not really sure if they were going to get in. I mean, as Notre Dame beat them the first time, but then Clemson comes into the ACC championship with Notre Dame, and then with Trevor Lawrence back, I mean, they pretty much walked all over the Irish. But again, Notre Dame's still in. I think, and I'm like you, I think they got the right teams, and I agree that you're leaving out some really good teams. Like, I genuinely think
you are.
That Texas A&M and Cincinnati, I think they have just as good of a shot. And because Alabama's clearly the number one, but I think Texas A&M has just as good of a shot to beat any of those top 4 teams as anyone else, and including Cincinnati. They've done some fantastic things this season. So, again, but just to stay with these 4 teams and kind of focus on them, Alabama, as I said, they've been dominant all year. They were number 1, and even if they lost, which they, again, kind of a nail biter against Florida, at least in the second half.
Yeah, that game was close in the second half.
But so Alabama was clearly in. Clemson, their only loss was to Notre Dame without Trevor Lawrence. And once they made their point by beating the Irish, again, that pretty much sealed the deal that they were going to make it into the playoff. Again, Ohio State has been the talk in the sense of, were they really good? I mean, other than a game, and I don't even know about that. I mean, they've steamrolled the teams like they should have, but of course against IU they won just by a score. In the Northwestern first half did not look good at all, but second half they finally picked it up. But again, this is an Ohio State team that I think they do deserve to be in, but there is that uncertainty because of the now 6 number of games that they've played. And then of course Notre Dame, lone loss to Clemson kind of canceled out when they were defeating them. And again, the team that a lot of people were not sure if they were going to make it. So it's definitely going to be interesting again with the matchup, Alabama, Notre Dame, and Clemson and Ohio State, which both I think will still be good games. But just a kind of early prediction as before we get ready, I think your matchup, or I most likely think your rematch is going to be of Alabama and Clemson again.
Yeah, Notre Dame has a chance maybe. Alabama's offense is just so good. That's the problem. They lost one of their best receivers, and in Jalen Waddle, and their offense continued without a hitch. I mean, Najee Harris is great running the ball. He had 4 touchdowns, broke the record for most touchdowns in a conference championship game in the SEC, if I remember correctly. And then Mac Jones has played lights out all year. They got receivers galore. I mean, Steve Sarkisian has been drawing up offensive plays like no other this year. So I don't want to. Yeah, I mean, yes, Alabama. Yeah, yes. Notre Dame's been really good this year, and they beat a good Clemson team, yes, without Trevor Lawrence, and it got flipped. But it's really hard to beat a team twice, so I don't want to knock on Notre Dame too much for that. But Alabama's really good, and I don't see how that's going to flip the script. And then Clemson, Ohio State, to be honest, has played 2 good teams this year, like really good teams, in Northwestern and Indiana, and those teams gave them fits. Yeah, I'm obviously they pulled out and won the game. I'm gonna give Justin Fields a little bit of break on the Northwestern game. He was playing hurt, he messed up thumb on his throwing hand, so that could factor into some of why he didn't play so well in that Northwestern game. But he didn't look good against Indiana, and I think Clemson's better than Indiana. They have more talent. I'm not gonna say. I mean, Indiana's really good on defense, so I don't want to say they're better than Indiana on defense, but I think they're just as good. So. Mm-hmm. It's going to be tough. I don't see how Ohio State beats Clemson based on they've beaten teams that are not good really easily. And yeah, they've won the tough games, but Clemson's better than Northwestern and Indiana. And those games are close. So we'll see what happens.
If you enjoyed this video, be sure you like and subscribe for similar content. And also, let's get a discussion going down in the comments below. We'd love to hear and debate your opinions as well. You can also check out the full episodes on all the major podcasting sites.